Hey Earl, have a cup of coffee with you and looking forward to attempting to answer your questions. As you can see, it's a cold, rainy day here in the Pacific Northwest, as usual. A little slushy. Great weather to be outdoors. Now, when it comes to being trained, or specifically trained on how to compete, I don't know, that's not really what I meant to come across, because competition and competing is written in our DNA. You know, I think that competition is something that is endemic or inherent to the human condition. Think about it, you know, we compete with each other, especially in the days of the cavemen, Neoliths, or what have you. We compete for food. We compete for the rights to a mate with the most attractive female to have the best offspring. You know, even the animals do it. It's a competition is a very primal force of nature. I mean, plants do it. They compete for sun. You know, we're all competing to survive in this world. And that goes without saying. It isn't something that can really be trained or taught. However, you know, it can be honed, and I think with the sentience of human existence and how cognizant we are, we can become aware of that conditioning, aware of that primal urge to compete, and know when to turn it off and when to turn it on. Because, like you were saying, it's really cool that you took Taekwondo for about 7 years, because I took Parker Kempo for roughly the same amount of time. And while I don't think I was in as many tournaments as you, I did partake in a lot of tournaments. And you know, when it comes to competition, exploitation is definitely a major factor in competing. And as you can see, you know, how that competition bleeds into our society, our economy, our way of life. You can see the exploitation taking place. You know, people do it in advertisement. You know, they exploit our primal lusts to make us want to buy products. But you know, I'm getting off topic here, because I guess competition is such a broad topic that can be looked at from so many different angles. But now, to get back into instances where I feel that I was trained at a young age, the first thing that really sticks out to me was, I think it was 3rd grade, we had these holy cards. And you know, there's addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, and we were timed. And we had to finish these holy cards in 5 minutes, whatnot. There was like 20 questions of addition, multiplication, and such. And whoever did it the fastest and was the most accurate got a gold star. And you know, if you had 5 gold stars, you got a present from the teacher. You know, and there's always this kid, I remember, his name was Ben. He was just very smart at math, and he was always up on top, you know. And we all judged ourselves through the competition through him, like, oh, are you as good as Ben? You know, none of us are as good as Ben. But then, you know, there's the person that was in the mid ground that, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm not as good as Ben, but at least I'm better than Joe. And that's how we judged our skill, was through competing with other classmates. You know, I'm not as smart as Ben, but I'm smarter than Joe. And that was what gave you a sense of who you were. And you know, that is the kind of competition that I was getting at with my discussion on misanthropic attitudes and misanthropy, because it's those circumstances where we judge each other, or we've been learned or trained to judge each other, kind of size each other up to see who we are or how we rate amongst other people, to get a sense of ourselves, or get a sense of where we stand in the world, or a sense of standing in our society. Another thing I remember too was gym class. We had to do this little obstacle course. We had to like climb the rope, run the mile, do push-ups, sit-ups, what have you. And it was the same thing, you know. We all got to see who was the most physically fit and where we all ranked with one another. So it would be the same thing, you know, the competition would let you know where you rank in society. And you know, it would be like, oh, Joe is the best at gym. You know, Ben is the middle ground. I'm not as good as Joe, but I'm better than Ben. And everyone would want to be that, would never want to be on the bottom, you know. So everyone would try to do what they could to get on top. And that is healthy to a degree, I believe. You know, because there is a place and time for competition. But then in other things, when it comes to learning, when it comes to training for a job, when it comes to social institutions and law and stuff like that, I don't think that competition should really come into play. You know, like that thing with the holy cards, that just really still sticks to me today as a terrible way of teaching children. You know, feeling bad about yourself or thinking that you're less than someone else because you're not as fast at holy cards. You know, and I still have a little bit of angst and resentment about that, because it did affect my self-esteem to a degree. You know, because I had ADD and I was bad with numbers, and at the holy cards, you know, I was always next to the last. And of course, you know, my name was on display with no stars ever, you know, so I got the label as being stupid, what have you. Now, I don't know if I'm gonna have time, but I'm gonna try to jump into your other question. But how do you get inside someone's mind, which you have no idea at all, and what are some techniques for doing that? No, that's a really good question, and it's one that I've always been struggling with my entire life. You know, I remember that I had a bully who used to pick on me all the time, and I never could understand it. I never could understand why someone would want to do that to another human being. But as I got older, you know, you can kind of see how that comes from. And then training comes back into play, because as you were saying, maybe he did have an abusive father and he had to pass that down. And this is how I see that. Ever watch those wildlife documentaries? And if you watch them, you'll notice there'll be a bear, all right? And he'll be fishing. Then a bigger bear comes along. You know, once that bear's fishing spot, then the bear mauls the crap out of the smaller bear, just beats its ass. And then, you know, the bear, shamed in its defeat, goes wandering off. And then if you notice in some of these documentaries, that angry bear that just got his ass kicked will find a bear smaller than it. And then it will maul and beat the crap out of that bear. And then I'm sure that bear that just got beat will find another bear, and it just trickles down. And I think that violence hatred, mean attitudes has a trickle-down effect. Just like goodness does. You know, like when you did something for somebody and another person saw that, you know, maybe he did something good for someone else. So I think both bad forms of thought or bad attitudes and good attitudes can be passed back and forth. Sorry, switching angles is tough when you have a coffee in your hand. And one way I think of getting behind those people's minds is I think to a time when I was feeling really angry or when I was feeling hateful. Then I try to think back to, all right, what aroused those thoughts of anger, of hatred in me? And the number one things I can find are 1, envy, jealousy. 2, projection of something I hate in myself onto others, or as in identifying in another person something that I really hate about myself and seeing it in their attitude. And you know, I just kind of like acknowledge that yes, I felt that, and I try to, you know, project those feelings that I've had, or to think about those feelings that I had and how they could relate to another human being, and how maybe some people don't step back to think about why they're feeling like that. They just ride the wave. Giving into that anger, giving into that hatred makes them feel better about themselves, even if just for an ephemeral amount of time they get a release by being hateful, and it makes them feel good about themselves. But the problem with that is that it's only going to be a short-lived burst of good, you know, feeling good about yourself. And then after that, you're going to feel terrible about yourself. It's like the sex addict needs to have sex to feel good about himself. Then after he has sex, he feels terrible about himself. And how does he cope with that? By having sex some more. And I think your hateful person, when he's hateful, it makes him feel better. It relieves his anxiety. And then he feels terrible. And so when he feels terrible, what does he do? He has to be hateful again in order to feel good about himself yet again. And then that just snowballs out of control until he's hateful all the time. You know, same thing with the alcoholic or with the drug addict. Well, I think I rambled on enough, and I hope I addressed some of your questions. I know I got a little off topic. That tends to happen, you know, when you do these walk and talks and when you're drinking some coffee, your mind just starts going crazy and going on tangents that get a little out of control. But that's what I love about the walk and talk, is that you don't know where your conversation is going to go. You don't know where your brain's going to go. And that's why I also don't like to prepare before I say these things, because it's fun to explore where my stream of consciousness is going to take me. And Earl, thanks for those thought-provoking questions. And maybe I'll still want to post a video in response to one of yours. Maybe I'll ask you a couple questions, see what you can come up with. Alright, I'll see you later, Earl. Bye.